So welcome to Lean and Opinionated Java applications. Why Lean? You will see why Lean. In my opinion, it's impossible to simplify them any further. This is Lean. And why Opinionated? Because it's my opinion. And I had lots of trouble with that. So I will show you actually how I think Java applications have to be designed. And I would spend a lot of time in coding, so it is actually a coding session. So I want to use a lot of slides because, yeah, it's harder to explain things with slides. I'm still freelancer or contractor, singleton or whatever. I'm working with Java since 1995, and I'm registered my freelance tasks in 1997. So I worked 2 years in Java and then became, I don't know how it's called, contractor or whatever. And my personal opinion is Java programming language rocks. So not only the Java platform, but the Java programming language. And what it means, I get the question asked a lot, why we don't use Scala, Groovy, Clojure, whatever in our projects, so we're more productive. And at least in my projects, it is not the problem with the language. It's the problem with the architects. So what happens in my project is like, they are reading some patents books, and they're applying whatever they read, whether it makes sense or not, to Java EE, and you end up with 2% business logic and 98% bloat. So, and then the solution is to move away from Java to something else. And the problem with that is, if you migrate your J2E project to Scala, Groovy, or whatever, you probably won't use the same stupid patterns. So you are not comparing, pragmatic Java with pragmatic Groovy. You are comparing, ivory tower architectures with J2E with pragmatic Groovy, Clojure, or whatever. So in my opinion, if we just implement reasonable applications, we would be very, very productive. And then if you just use Clojure, Scala, whatever, you will probably be even 5 to 10% more productive. But actually, then no one cares anymore. Okay? This is actually my opinion about Java and new languages. And I said over and over again, it's one of most common questions. What do you think about Scala, whatever? I guess everything is nice, but it's not the problem. For enterprise. If you're building Twitter, Google, or, I don't know, telco systems, it's probably another use case. In my projects, I don't think we would be essentially more productive with something else than Java. Okay, agreed? Everyone? Nice. I forgot to mention, if you don't agree with me, you get a T-shirt. And this is a Airhex T-shirt. It's called Airborne Developer, and the reason for that is I do 3 times a year at Munich Airport a workshop, and actually all developers are airborne developers. This was the idea for the T-shirt. So I wrote actually 2 books, the recent books. I actually wrote 8, but I think the first 6 are in German, so absolutely unusable for you. And but these are in English, and they actually both are somehow covered in my topic. So, and yeah, this was the workshop, and this is my last slide because I don't think you can explain Java EE very well on slides. So what I would like to do is I will try, this is a little bit kamikaze project right now, to build from scratch a Java 7 application with Maven and explain what I'm doing in my applications and what the problems actually are. If you see some syntax errors or whatever, please help me. I will not use any wizards or something. I hate them. So I will code everything from scratch. Okay? This was, this is my blog. I have a Twitter as well. And I'm not on Facebook and LinkedIn. I have no time for that, right? So Twitter is OK. Everything else is time sync. And thank you. Remember the slide. This is my last slide. Okay. So remember that. Take a picture. We are allowed to take pictures today. So and now I can call the slides. I'm no more nervous because slides are over. So first, what I always have to do is kill Java because. And now I start. And that is just pragmatic. The first thing, huge discussion, Eclipse, NetBeans, IntelliJ, whatever. In my opinion, in modern age of enterprise development, your system should be not dependent on the IDE. There should be no reference in Maven, Gradle, whatever to the IDE, period. What it means, any developer should choose what he likes. It shouldn't matter, and the discussion is over. And in my project, there's no more discussion. And I get the, the arguments back, but we have to support the developers with what? What do we like support us with what? I mean, coffee probably, right? But there is no IDE support. I mean, what do we would like to do? And the next part is, if you need strange plugins or something to develop your application, is a very bad sign. So to verify your architecture, it should work. You should be able to write Hello World with VI, Emacs, Notepad, or something like this, and not, fire up your generation engine and create everything and generate lots of code. These times are over. Agreed, everyone? Okay, nice audience. But I will give the T-shirts away. They are way too heavy. So please ask questions. So I start with Maven. So the first thing, the next question I get often asked, do you like Maven? Say, it depends. In enterprise, it's perfect. But if you would try to build with Maven native stuff and all this strange stuff, I would never use Maven for that. So why Maven is appropriate if you can live with convention? If you can live with the conventions, is Maven the best possible thing? There's actually nothing to do. If you cannot live with the conventions, use something. I would tend towards Gradle, for instance. Ant is a little bit too low level, and Make is a little bit too old, I would say. So something like Gradle is reasonable. Okay. What do we like to build? I had actually an idea. I forgot it. What we can do? Sessions management. A little bit boring. Yeah, I have to use Glassfish because I would like to use Java 7. Glassfish v4. And JBoss and Tommy and the others will support Java 7 in, I think, end of year. So then I will run the applications, and what happens then, I expect the Derby database and Glassfish to start up. By the way, I have no plugins installed. It's just plain NetBeans. The similar experience you get with IntelliJ, and with Eclipse, you will have to spend a few days looking for plugins and configuration, but it's fun. The first few times is fun. After several years of searching, I lost my patience, I would say, right? So the only problem with that, what happens behind the scenes? NetBeans fired up the Maven archetype generate. And what it is, it pulls from XML catalog from Central a bunch of wizards, and NetBeans used the standard wizard to create a Java 6 or now Java 7 project. The problem with that is, not a problem, actually, the good thing is it's correct. The bad thing is we can simplify that a lot. And I will do it right now. So this is the POM. And the first thing, what I don't like, the name here, is just absolutely confusing. That if you name it differently to the artifact ID, I search forever. This is in my enterprise project, like they have very nice names, but they absolutely don't match to the artifact IDs. So I always go to source code. So the first, you have to delete this one. Okay? So now we are a little bit leaner, by the way. How big is it? This is now our 70 lines of code for the whole Maven project. So now, this one is not needed. So Maven compiler plugin is nice, but there is another hack. This is interesting. What this does is, this is a lot of XML just to say that we don't need any XML. So what it actually says is, web XML is optional. It's like, okay, nice. And this is actually a little bit more interesting. What it does, it prefers Java 7 classes over JDK classes because of JSR 250. So the homework is to search for JSR 250. What it is, JDK is shipped with annotations like post-construct, pre-destroy, add resource, and so forth. And they are older than expected in Java 7. The good news is you only need these annotations for stranger things, like working with low-level JDBC. You don't need the plugin a lot, so I always delete it, and it works in my case. So let's delete this. So then, of course, empty plugin is a little bit odd. So it's also deleted. And now we have the only thing which is reasonable. And these are three properties which I always use, and they replace the plugins. The first one says compiler source 17 target and fail on missing false. So, agreed? And we could delete build, but what I like to do, there is a tag called final name, and I always said it. The problem with Maven is if you don't do this, war will end up with the name version something, one or snapshot, and you will end up in the context URI. If you write some system tests for REST applications and so forth, you will have to adjust them. So final name, you could use the variable or just say session management. And actually, this is what I start with all my Java 6 and Java 7 projects starting like that. Now super POM nothing. It is very important. If you start with a huge POM, no usual developer will accept that, right? If you start lean and then add more stuff. So for me, POM XML is like Java code. It has to evolve, and you have to maintain it like a Java code. You won't believe how POM looks in some Java E projects. So in one project, we had OpenEJB, Glassfish, Tomcat, Jetty as plugins, and I asked them why you are doing this. There was no one in the project who knew why the plugins are there. And there was like 2K lines of code of Maven, and they asked me to help them. It's like, OK, I can only tell you we don't need this, right? So, OK. On no super POM nothing, start with that. And then question every plugin, everything. So, and this is actually how really 80% of my project are looking like. Of course, I need JUnit, Hemcrest, and stuff like that. But this is actually usual plugins, yeah? But I wouldn't create for them a super POM and take with me. I think if you start with this way and developer looks at the POM, you will immediately find actually what happens behind the scenes. No magic. No magic development. Agreed? Yep. Perfect. Question? Now for weeks. I'm a consultant, and at least in European contract, it's like I have to provide my services at the common, how it's called, common level of technology. How it's called? There's a saying like I have to provide my services for the common level of wisdom or whatever. And so what I do, I explain them what they are doing is not what I was supposed to do, and I attempt 3 times to improve the world. If it doesn't work, I can go with 2K POM. I'm a consultant. I will earn more money doing strange things. But I don't have to. I try to explain it to customer, and I've often hired if something goes bad. Task forces, and usually I can do whatever I want. It has to work. So then I delete everything, of course. But if I don't have the chance, I try to explain. And I mean, the idea is POM XML, you should treat POM XML as Java code. This is the basic idea. You get a T-shirt? Yeah.
Why did you remove the version from the final name?
Because if you don't remove the version from final name and don't use any vendor extensions like Glassfish Web or JBoss Web, it will create war with the name session management-10 snapshot. If you deploy it to JBoss, Glassfish, or Tommy, you will end up with the context URI session management 10 snapshot, and then you have the problem with testing. Because if you would like to write, for instance, a REST client, you will adjust your tests.
But otherwise, you will have a problem knowing which version.
I don't think so. So you have, in content on Jenkins, you have probably something like a branch, or it should be obvious. And by the way, but good point, what you can do with Maven, I don't do it right now because it's just a little bit off topic, but on that note, what you can easily do, create a REST service with path version and point the service to POM properties, which comes with your project. And so you will never forget in which version the application is delivered. This is what you have to do. OK? No?
No, we just started doing that like last week. So
And?
I was shaking my head.
It works?
Yeah, so far so good.
Oh, perfect. But it's a no, and then you did it, so OK. It's like no, it's like, yeah, we did it. Perfect. So,
One more question.
yeah.
What is your opinion about multi-module projects in Maven?
You will have to have at some point in time multi-module projects in Maven, but I wouldn't start with that. We are not in waterfall, right? So I will start with one. We create the first use case, then we create a test project, then we have 2 projects, and then we get multi-module.
Because I can see separation, like the web part, like JSPs, views, all the stuff, you just separate it in a separate sub-project.
I would never do this because it implies that the web and the business logic is separated. It runs in different JVMs. One pattern I learned, don't distribute. It's the most important pattern.
Yeah, it was actually a project which is
Don't do that.
One file, while before that they have several jar files which are separate layers, let's say.
So 2 points. All my new projects since 2009 are wars. I don't create ears anymore. There are some specific cases for ears, but there are no more ears. The second thing, this is opinionated, so my opinion, monolithic is good. Somehow, developers tend to build 500 modules for Hello World applications. And I wouldn't like to create this now because we have no time for that. So what I really like to do is the following. Everything is monolithic until it becomes too big. Then you create the second monolith, and they create via REST in Java 7. No binary coupling. Playing with interfaces, modules, and stuff like that, you won't be able to manage the binary compatibility between the modules anyway. So give it up. So we have wars, which are monolithic, and these wars, if they have to communicate, they communicate via REST. You could earn more money with SOAP, but who likes to use technology from 1945?
Why not remote EJB?
Pardon?
Why not remote EJB?
Very good question. Why not remote EJBs? It's because remote EJBs rely on IOP on Corba, and how it's implemented, usually, you will have to end up in the other war to use the application server client from the first one. It is really hard to manage. So I would say remote EJBs are dead. So to shorten the answer. So remote EJBs, you shouldn't, there is no reason anymore to use remote EJBs. Really. If you would like to, there is probably one similar issue. Let's say you have an old legacy system. And this legacy system has to be exposed, let's say, to Swing or JavaFX lines, whatever. So instead of using remote EJBs, I would rather use something like Hessian. This is like remoting via HTTP. And the reason for that is often we don't have the time to rethink our business layer and create nice RESTful web services. RESTful is not HTTP. RESTful is an idea that is addressing objects. OK? Very good.
And what if you need a shared transaction?
You shouldn't like shared transactions, and XA is very problematic. And we don't have time to discuss this, but the problem with, if you really like to start with XA transactions, look at XA exception. And look at the different exceptions IDs, like is heuristic mix, for instance, and think how to cover these exceptions. So for SOAP, you could use WS transactions. You could. We should test whether it actually works. And I would say an XA, we had only trouble with XA so far, and the problem were not our code. The code were always XA drivers from different vendors. This is my experience with XA. So try to avoid XA. How you could avoid XA? Changing the business logic, unfortunately. So you have to provide compensative transactions, but business transaction, not undo, a business undo. OK? This is the only way to go. Wow, yes, I would like to hack something. So, but OK.
What the use cases for ears are?
Oh, ears. If you with ears, you have more flexibility about class loading. You could also, for instance, deploy a JCA connector with the ear. It's not possible with WAR. But this is very uncommon case, I would say. Agreed? OK. Then at least the next stage is, I'm from Europe, so Germany, and it seems like, at least I never was in the USA, I never saw an US project, but in our cases, it seems like the bigger the company, the less interested developers actually are to implement the business logic. OK? So like they start with frameworks and everything, and this is a huge problem. So I get hired, really, no kidding, and I got several times 2 weeks' time to set up the project. This is what I did right now. This is what I do. I mean, 2 weeks is even if I would write 1 line a day, it wouldn't be, 2 weeks. So, And there is no way to convince the customer to start. And the problem then, what we can do? Then I ask, could you build us our small framework? We need logging, configuration, you know, there are the classics. And this is the beginning of the end. No frameworks. In Java 6 and Java 7, frameworks are counterproductive. Everything is on the server. We don't need any frameworks per default. So start from day one with implementation of the business logic. And meetings are forbidden. So there is also in Europe, there is like the idea that meeting is cheaper than hacking, right? And I don't get it. So it is a lot better to start with something which is suboptimal, throw it away, and start over. What I see in projects, really, I was on project, I was not allowed to hack. But they say me, if I start to hacking, I will write a code and then it's over. We cannot discuss anymore. It's like, no, it's not, it doesn't work that way. It's not like it is locked. We can change that. No, no, no. And they discussed for several months without any business outcome. There was actually no result. Okay? So minimize meetings, build, concentrate on business logic. Yes?
So what frameworks do they need and why do they think they need them? Is it kind of a Tomcat mentality that comes from Tomcat? Think they need all these things? Realize it's there?
I mean, most of the consultants come with super POMs. This was my observation. They start with project with the super POM, and the super POM comprises everything they ever built. And if you inherit from the super POM, you get everything they ever built. This is the first problem. The next problem, developers like frameworks. And we have a German magazine called Java Magazine. This is similar to Oracle without the E. And I asked developers, why are you doing that? And the answer was, we read an article about this. This seemed cool, and now we're doing this. So article-driven design, really. So there is no reason. And and the next point is, often the developers do not look at Java EE and JDK. They look instead in Apache Commons, whatever. And this is the problem. So my idea is, look at JDK first. It's amazing what's there. Then look at Java 6. Amazing what's there. And the less we are dependent on, the better it is. So what if in enterprise means the application has to be maintained over, let's say, 5 years? Okay? So if it's the case, my argument is any external dependency is forbidden. Or we make it buildable on our CI. If you like to use Apache Commons, it has to build on our continuous integration server. Why? Because Apache Commons or whatever can disappear one day, this version, and then it's over. So then we have to maintain this dependency by ourselves. And this has happened a lot. For instance, all the Access versions, there were no more in web available, neither in archives.org. I didn't find them. What he had to do is to decompile the libraries and fix the error and recompile them, which is strange, right? So if all dependencies are forbidden, this is my opinion. If you like a dependency, you have to justify that. And sometimes it is, for instance, security, right? Encryption. I would never build my own encryption algorithm. So sometimes they are about, I would never use infrastructure. Like, I would always prefer Java util logging over Log4j per default, because it comes with JDK. If it doesn't work, then I will look at Log4j. No discussion. It's just reasonable, I would say. Agreed? So, and what we have done, so I satisfied my customer, because if you don't have any external dependencies, we are not dependent on anything, which is a good thing for the lifetime of the project. This would be the optimal case. And the next, what I really like is, the war is extremely small. If the war is small, deployment is fast. And fast deployment means productivity. And this is the most important thing. So we discussed the productivity. Oh, yeah. So what it actually means for me, at the beginning of the project, the Jenkins should run like hell. Very, very fast. What happens with do nothing, you get the worst possible machine for Jenkins. So you have escalated. You need 100 cores and 100 gigabyte of RAM or whatever, SSDs array or whatever, because fast Jenkins, productivity, and you can show the business case to any management. Everyone will understand that waiting 10 minutes to something to build is waste of time. I get often an argument, but you could build multiple projects at the same time, yeah, and share, and you can start this and send this, and then it's like, okay. Then it would mean that, for instance, an author which writes a novel could write 5 books at the same time because his pen is too slow or something, right? So it's just crazy talk. So it doesn't work that way. Okay? So, okay, first assumption, external dependency forbidden. In my project, if you like dependency, we have a wiki or Excel. Excel, you have to say, OK, I would like to have the comments, and I save the time, or I didn't found it, or what is the reason using this dependency? Very important. Otherwise, you will end up with everything. OK. Everyone agreed? So don't read the German magazines, right? So, so the next point is business logic first. So actually, I would say, I don't know whether you still remember rational unified process. And this rational unified process was not very pragmatic, except the beginning of this. And there was one vision statement, which is always lacking in projects. This is one pager with the vision why we are building the project. In most of my enterprise projects, the developer don't know why we are building the software. There's no kidding. They get thousands of use cases, just click the button and cancel and whatever, and no one knows what actually is the reason to build a system. It's a very important to have the vision statement. And the next part, which is also great from rational unified process, key entities or essential entities. What it means is every system we know consists of core concepts. And the core concepts are like customer or order or something like this. Why? Because I create from the core concepts components. So what it means, my Java 7 system always looks the same. It means in case of the structure. And in this case, it would look like probably com Java 1, or just 1, probably Java is trademark or something. So 1, business, so business layer or tier. I always separate this. And then comes the component. And the component would be sessions. And why sessions or session? Because it is the essential entity of our system. You would like to manage sessions or speakers, whatever. So, agreed? And then there is another pattern called entity control boundary, a very old one. I reused the names from the pattern. Why? To avoid meetings. Before the pattern, I invented my own names, and you always discuss why this and why this, why not this. If you find something which is standard, there's no discussion anymore. You can point to the standard, and it's over. One meeting less is always good, right? So, boundary and session something. Management is a very, very bad idea, but I have no other idea right now. So I will call it management or provider or something, but not manager. Otherwise, you end up everything is a manager. Session managers, you have just managers, right? So, so boundary manager. So one business tier sessions component name boundary is the layer, and session provider is the class. What's important here? So what we have, how it looks like, we have actually 2 tiers. So we have presentation, we have business, 2 packages. And within the business package, I have business components, so they can look like this in UML. But this is just a regular Java package. And the Java package was sessions. And the session has to be something what the business department or domain expert, whoever product management actually understands. Very, very important. So then we get probably another component, speakers. And another component, I don't know what, hotel management or whatever. The important point is we should focus on business, not on technology. What I see in my project instead, like I call it always bureaucratic-driven design, is like these are exceptions. These are interfaces. These are beans. These are DTOs, VOs. Who cares? Because in 3 years, if we have a request for extension or we have to fix something, the customer will say, extend the session with something else, attachment, whatever. So where to search? I can only search in the full text search in the whole project. But if we concentrate on the essential entities, I will open the business component session, and everything which is session related is there. And this is nothing new. It's just object-oriented programming. But for some reason, it's forgotten in Java. OK? Agreed? So, and the nice story about ECB, there are established icons you can use to model. They look like this. This is the boundary. This is the entity. And this is the control. OK? Agreed? This is an EJB. And yeah, this is an EJB. So this is how EJB looks like. We are in Java 7. So beans XML is optional, but I would like to create one. because I would like to not just use annotated object, but all. What it means now I can inject POJOs. In Java 6, you don't need it. This is a feature of Java 7, so you can say just annotated object or not. So this is actually a new feature. So session provider, and let's say the session provider gives us a string get sessions, and these are Java. So what we need also is RESTful web services. In all my projects, we have RESTful web services. And the argument is very simple. Even, let's say JSF is great. But if you're thinking about responsive design or integration of native Android or iOS devices, you will end up to have something which is portable. And this is nothing more portable than REST. So we always have RESTful web services, regardless whether we are using JSF or not. So in JSF is optional, but I always use JSF, start with JSF, because in my eyes, it's the simplest possible technology for simple applications. OK? So then the name is sessions resource. So, and what I need right now is the configuration for RESTful web service, and I call it always REST configuration. And it's just a class. And what you can do, if you like, you can put the version number here. And this is a good idea if you can influence the clients and the server at the same time. In internet scale project or web scale project, forget about this. You should never have the version number in the URI, because if you upgrade, you will break all the clients. So I would say, in our case, just to show, you can call it V1. I'm assuming I'm enterprise application, and it is released at the same time the clients and the server. This is actually my assumption right now. Agreed? So, and now you have to know that it extends from application, and this is the application. Now we have RESTful web services, almost. So we have to say the path is sessions. And this can be a stateless session bean. So the transactions are started a little bit earlier. And we could actually return the messages. Get. Oh. Then we get the session provider. And we inject it with @inject. And say here, return sp.getSession. So this is actually a real-world architecture. What it means, I would never put RESTful annotations on that. Why? Because what you will end up here, you will have to work with responses, headers, e-text, and all the stuff. And at some point of time, your business logic will be dependent on RESTful web services, which is very, very bad idea. So the idea is the provider, the boundary, is never dependent on a protocol. And if you like, if you have to use SOAP for some unknown reasons, you could create here sessions SOAP adapter, which accesses the same boundary. So regardless how simple the project is, I always have additional resource classes. Agreed? Yes or not? Yeah? Yes. OK, perfect. Thank you. Session management, probably V1. Sessions. It actually works. So it's a very small, very simple Java 7 application. So now the next one, we actually would like to have a session. And the session is an entity, one session. And this is an entity. Or let's start easy. Let's say at least the session has a name. And it's JAXB bound. This works in Java 6 and Java 7, so nothing new here. So, and probably I would like to have two constructors. So this should be enough. So what I can do right now is I could return here the session. So let's skip the bean and just try that. One session. And return new one session. And the name is, of course, Duke. So we have XML. and XML, and we should also get JSON. JSON is not specified, but is working well with most application servers. Application JSON. OK? And the next hack is, if you have Java clients which are accessing the backend, there are two nice classes, message body reader and message body writer. If you extend from these classes, you can put any serialization protocol you like. I described actually with the green book. The examples are also out there. They are free. Just download them. I call that JSON serializer or something, or REST serializer. And what you could also do, the fastest serialization protocol I'm aware of is called CRUD. So so what it means, true content negotiation. iOS clients get JSON. Browser gets XML because it prefers XML. And all Java clients could get what? Native Java objects. The overhead are 2 lines of HTTP. Agreed? So if you have Java clients, still use REST, yeah?
And that's where you use it instead of EJB, without EJB.
Yes. Yes, this is the case from, yeah. So I just wanted to show you how it looks like instead of discussing it. You see, shortened meetings, code is nicer. So now, what we have boundary, entity, but we don't have the control layer. So, and the control layer is in the first iterations absolutely forbidden in my projects. Why? Because if you make the control layer mandatory, it will be empty. And for 80% of all use cases, it will also remain empty. So what we do instead is, there is a great Swiss open source tool called Sonar Source. This is just a Maven plugin. This is very fast to install. And what it does, there is one similar framework is grep4j. Actually, grep4j is exactly what I need, but Sonar Source comes with lots more stuff. And this is the relation between how it's called complexity, cyclomatic complexity and code coverage. And if you think about this, this is actually a perfect for measurement of maintainability of the system. So it means, in our case, complex classes have to be tested. Simple classes shouldn't be tested. If someone has time to test getters and setters, something is wrong with the application, right? So, I mean, they have too much time to, I don't know. There's code coverage-driven design, I would say. So what happens then? The boundary will grow and grow and grow, and it will appear in grep4j or in Sonar. We'll identify it's too complex, then divide and conquer. We introduce controls after it grew for some time. If you begin with decomposition from day one, you end up with lots of classes with no responsibilities. Agreed? Yes, no? So, but how it would look like, let's say we have here a class. This is a control. And we could say, I don't know, archiver. It archives all the sessions or whatever. So this is just a POJO with one method archive. And I can just inject it to the bean. So to this bean, this archiver. So you see 2 things, no interfaces and no private. So interfaces in my project's opinionated talk are forbidden. So why are they forbidden? The following observation. Interfaces in enterprise projects in the past had no function. Architect thought about extensibility, whatever, and forced developers to build interfaces for everything. And the developers, what they had to do, they had to implement the interface, and they got what? A name clash. And then we got strange patterns like, archiver impl. Or the other say, okay, this is bad, so we can start with I archiver and archiver. So what it means in my projects, if you cannot name the class properly, interfaces are forbidden. If you forbid interfaces, there are some cases which cannot be implemented. This is strategy pattern. In the view cases, you will end up with the problem that you have actually 2 implementations in one interface. But I tell you, in most enterprise projects, this is absolute exception from the rule. Most interfaces, there is one-to-one relation for the life cycle of the projects. So what I do, meanwhile, as research in subversion, how often some implementations change. I can tell you, at least in Europe, they never changed. So it means the whole assumption from the architect that we are extensible, you can throw it away. We are extensible, but it's like, having car with 6 wheels, because at one day one could break, so you will drive 100,000 miles with 6 wheels, and
The argument always comes from testability.
forget it. Okay.
Which Mockito has.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wanted to hack this. So why it's not private? Because the tests often reside in the same package as the class. So I can access directly all private fields without any magic. Mockito will be also able to inject private fields, but this is more magic than this. So this is the simplest possible thing. What the architect says is, you broke the encapsulation. It's like, actually not. Because in Java 6, we have proxies. And you won't manage to access a private fields or package private or whatever. It's impossible. So I say, okay, what I see instead, really, they make private fields and create public getters and setters, which really breaks the encapsulation, because these public getters and setters expose transactional way, even remote way, all the dependence to the outside. But then the architect is happy. So what you should learn, architect should be somehow avoided, right? So in one project, what we did, we had terrible architect. We promoted him to management. We say, okay, there's really, there's no kidding. And we stay friends, but we will orders of magnitude more productive. So, or if you have an architect, the architect should code with us. So coding architects are perfect. PowerPoint architects are a little bit problematic, I would say. Often I would say something else, but now a little bit problematic. Yeah? Questions regarding this? So you have boundary. On demand, you can inject controls. This is the basic architecture. All packages, business components, have to be named after key abstractions. And there should be no component with technical name. Exception is a classic. So there's, for some reason, most of the project is on package exception. All exceptions are there. And what absolutely forbidden in my projects are packages, modules with the name like commons, infrastructure, domain, base, framework, whatever. Everything which sounds nice but doesn't mean anything. So why util? Yeah, util is the classic. And why? If you allow this, it will become a kitchen sink. In shortest amount of time, you will find everything in this package. Look just at Java util. What is there? You would never, there are logs, collections, dates, everything is there, right? Okay? Everything which sounds nice, and it's but actually generic, is absolutely forbidden. Agreed?
Well, then where do you put your util classes?
Very good. So you get a T-shirt for sure for this. So where I put the util classes? There is no util class. There is a class which does string concatenation, or class which is responsible for logging, or class which is responsible for monitoring. So if you start with one class, I would create a package which sounds terrible. Thresh, junk, whatever, and put the class first. Why terrible? Because you're looking at this, and the next iteration you will try to remove that. If it grows, you will find responsibilities, and then I will create a package with the name logging, monitoring, configuration, whatever, but never util. Okay? Because util is really dangerous. Open your util projects, and you will find everything there, and 80% of there is dead. It's no more used. Okay? So
just to clarify, this is going to be again top-level package, not business component.
Oh, I'm experimenting with that. It really depends on projects. In my cases, on the business level. So I would have here on the business level a package with the name logging. It's not the best solution, but it's pragmatic.
Yeah.
because logging is actually no key abstraction, but what you can do, right? We need it somewhere. So, other questions? Yes?
If you have a base class with some stuff in it, how do you kind of factor that out?
You shouldn't have base classes in Java 6. It's very uncommon to have that, really. Base classes are more likely in entity level, where you have some behavior with, but on EJB level, it's very unlikely, and CDI level as well. But if you need the base class, I will put it at the same level like REST configuration. The REST configuration is on the business level, so it belongs to all business components. But if if for instance the base class is responsible for audits, I will put it in package audits. So, okay, it's just think like the business department do, because in my eyes, if we manage to have one-to-one relation between the requirements in the code, is maintainable. Don't obfuscate that. And whether we use Clojure or whatever, that doesn't matter actually, right? It doesn't matter which language we are using. So, what I found out in my recent projects, what you also can do, you could expose a JSON object instead of one session. So if you are working heavily with HTML5 and say there will be no Java clients, but you will get other clients as well, you can with Java 7, you can just expose straight JSON objects. And there is another interesting discussion, is should we have type-safe interfaces or weak interfaces, boundaries to the outside world? And it really depends on the use case. For smaller enterprise project, having a type-safe interfaces is a good thing. For web scale project, it's a terrible thing. Because on web scale, nothing is type-safe. You cannot just break the clients because they provide you one more attribute, right? So the bigger your application gets, the more you have to test, and the more you have to give up the type-safeness of your interface. Otherwise, you will lose customers, clients, or whatever. In enterprise space, it's a good idea to have type-safe interfaces. In web scale, not always. Agreed? There's like how the internet, there's a saying, the internet is like, we expect everything and provide quality. There is like a term, how, you know the term? It's like TCP/IP, also how the internet works is like, we accept thrash and deliver quality or something like this. So this is actually how RESTful web services and web scale should work. So, so we can do this. So we can create a JSON instead of this. And this looks like create object builder, add name and Duke build. And this is new, JSON object. So now we have just JSON. But if you need just JSON, go for that. Okay, you have complete control of serialization, deserialization of JSON. And this is the new JSON API, so it actually should work. Let's say name JSON, so you see the difference. Yeah, name JSON, you see? So, and the other way around, because of I could create a post method and accept JSON, it will just work. Questions regarding this? So what do you have? Very lean Maven, an application which is actually reasonable. This is actually really architecture from my commercial project. It's nothing else I created with you. As are we okay? We have still 10 minutes. So what's the problem? So so session provider. So I could inject the entity manager directly here. The entity manager. So what it means is the next fight with the architect. We need data access objects and DTOs, whatever. The problem is that actually the entity manager implements something like DRO 2.0. It's called domain store. It's an old pattern from Sun Microsystems. And if you look at the domain store pattern, domain store J2E patterns, you see there's a persistence manager factory, query, transactions. If you look at this, you will recognize it is actually the entity manager. If you rename persistence manager to entity manager factory, and query, and there is no transaction but entity transaction, it is the entity manager. So, and entity manager is not about SQL databases. There are meanwhile Mongo driver, Cassandra driver, data nucleus, Excel driver for entity manager. So what the entity manager abstracts from is entity manager abstracts from Hibernate, OpenJPA, and Eclipse Link. It abstracts from different databases. What you would like to abstract anymore? There's nothing else to abstract. If you manage to abstract the entity manager, you will end up with, I don't know what, so empty entity manager. And this is what usually happens in my projects, like they build a DAO, data access object, and the data access object is basically empty. And they rename the method a little bit because it would be stupid to call it merge. They name it safe. Really, no kidding. It is funny, but it's really how it is, right? So what is the problem with my approach? Injecting entity manager directly to boundary. What is the problem? The problem is you will end up probably with duplicate queries, right? But why you make a difference between query on Java code? It should be no difference. Avoid duplicates. What it means? If you will find out that you have two queries in two boundaries which are the same, then put it in control and don't name the control DAO, data access object doesn't mean anything, and it actually breaks the encapsulation. No one cares whether the custom is coming from the database or RESTful web service or whatever. Call it then, I don't know, session finder, but not session finder DAO, and now you encapsulated the entity manager. The question is how to find duplicates. Sonar Source had very good duplicate detection. Okay? So in my eyes, the entity manager is nothing specific. It's just a thing which can be considered like a Java class. So there is no reason to wrap entity managers over and over again. The problem is you cannot explain it to architects. So what I do often to reduce meetings, no kidding, I build a generic DAO. And if I see in my project there is no way to go without DAOs, I introduce proactively my DAO. And after few iterations, we get other problems than DAOs, right? And then I delete silently my DAO and everyone is happy. This is a social hack. If you see something, get it as whatever the architect is telling you, yeah? And then if you get real business problems, delete everything silently and no one will ask you for, so. At the beginning, it's like, there is a law, it's called Parkinson law of triviality. It was like there was a power plant was built, and the hard decisions were made immediately, and the trivial decision the more discussed that. Like, you know, the color of the carpet was like a 3 months decision because everyone could contribute. And the same is in such a project, right? So stop talking, just implement things. So data transfer objects. So data transfer objects are basically forbidden. Why? We have RESTful web services. What RESTful web service does, it maps Java objects to JSON, XML, whatever. So we have already one layer of conversion, abstraction, whatever. Introducing another layer of abstraction doesn't make things any better. It's just terrible. And DTOs in my projects are only allowed in case they look substantially different than the entities. What I see is just incredible in J2E. Entity and DTO identical. For each pair, one mapper, which invokes getters here and setters there, right? And the mapper is never tested because it's boring to test that. And the architects say, now we have decoupling. So then you can look at Subversion or Git or whatever. What I find out, it never changes. So on each feature request affects all layers. So the developers have to change the database, the entity, the DTO, another DTO, RESTful web service. And I would say encapsulation is only good if it encapsulates something. If in each feature request you have to change all the layers, there is no encapsulation. Delete the layers. Agreed? So DTO is valid if it looks substantially different to entities, and this eliminates in my projects frameworks like Dozer, Model Mapper are actually not needed because they don't work anymore. Dozer works only well in case both hierarchies are identical. And so if I see Dozer and I ask the developers, do you like Dozer? They say, yes, perfect. There is something wrong with the architecture.
What about the web layer? If you want to use something to bind the values, you use the domain objects or you create some web?
Very good. Almost forgot to build. So in web layer, I would get new package presentation. And I don't even attempt to create components at the first time in the web layer because it is hard to find. There is actually end-to-end relation between web components and business components. This is not like you have one silo from the beginning to the end. There is a end-to-end relation. I call the backing beans in web the same as the page. And this would be a model. Model is named and request scoped. And this would return the sessions. String get session. Return something. So I could inject here the EJB. Oh, I will have to inject the EJB. Session provider, SP. Inject. And say here sp.get session. And you see already, it is nice to have the resource layer, because the resource layer returns JSON object, and I would like to use the real objects here, right? And the question is, I would expose domain object here. If is this what I need, why to abstract? If you need something else, then I will introduce DTOs, data transfer objects. But why, right? Okay. This and the JSF page just accesses the backing bean directly. So what it means, what I never would like to do is to distribute GSF and EJBs artificially. Everything has to remain in one WAR, shared nothing architecture. Don't distribute. So start page. You see Java. It comes from there. From there, Java. And by the way, you have 4 minutes to go. This is a real-world architecture we start with. And then you get more and more components. And the question is, OK, but if you end up with monolithic wars, they don't scale anymore. And the observation is the following. I think Yahoo said something like, a team should survive with a pizza a day. So what it means, it has to be small. I don't believe in small projects. If you really have to have a huge project, the actual task for the architect is to split up the projects in smaller independent projects. So what you should do is to have, I don't know, 3 or 1 to 5 developers working on one war, and the other teams are working different wars, and the wars communicated via REST. And the transactions are usually not that such an issue, because they are very coarse-grained calls. It's not like you are invoking methods. It's like you are starting, I don't know, you are archiving something. It's a higher level coarse-grained interface. So we have still 3 minutes to go. Any questions left?
In that case, you would need anyway a jar project to be shared between the 2 jars.
Yes, it's a very good point. If you like to have some modularity, introduce jar projects. And the next hack is, the problem is sometimes you would like to reuse the contents of the war. Right? But it's not possible, because war is checked into M2 repo, but there is no class path with a war. There is a hack with the war plugin. It's called source attachment. If you do this in Maven will create a war and a jar, so you can reuse contents from the war as well. I blogged about that. If you search it, you will find source code.
Also, you have maybe an overlay if you want to share.
This is something similar. This I think is another possibility. Okay. Another question was, who asked?
What about lazy initialization? Like, do you have to have all these transactions, like here in the presentation?
A transaction presentation?
No, I mean lazy initialization.
Of what? Lazy initialization exception. No, I thought about transactions, or lazy transactions. Exceptions, you don't get the exceptions because the EJB is stateless. And stateless means the transaction is committed. And if you have problems with graph, there is in Java E7 an entity graph. So what you can do, you can pass a string, and with passing the string, it will load all the lazy objects for you. In Java E6, I misused for that JX path. JX path is like X path for Java. So you can pass the entity, pass a string, and then will reload whatever you need. Or it's called fetch joins. It's a part of the specification to do this. And this is actually a good point. What I sometimes see, architects are introducing DTOs to avoid lazy initialization. But what they actually would like, the developer invokes all the getters in the transaction. So I would rather say invoke the getters and don't create another object. I mean, it's just crazy, right? OK? Agreed?
Do features to favor portability, or?
Yeah, I always avoid, what I don't like that my project is dependent on Glassfish, JBoss, whatever. It's a very good thing to avoid proprietary features always. We had always trouble in the past. Dependency on IDEs. I was migration project from Visual H to something else, migration from BA to something else. And the problem with proprietary features is not that you will migrate from Glassfish, let's say, to JBoss. At one day, the proprietary feature can disappear. This is the problem, what you have. I was in a talk, it's like Sun Misc will disappear if they create Jigsaw. Then the same can happen in Java. Actually, it happened in one BA project. They use file services. It's like you could write persistent files, and it disappeared in BA 8 or something, which just went away. So you should be never dependent on that. So what I sometimes use for products are Killian with Profile, and we test against different application servers. No.
Is there any literature or book that you would recommend that follows?
I mean, this is my way of, this is described in the Green Book for me. By the way, today I enrolled it in Matchbook, something from Amazon. If you buy the printing copy, you get Kindle for free. And if you have a Kindle, you can lend it for free, absolutely free. So if you have Kindle, you get it for free. If you don't like Kindle, you can buy it as print and get it for free for Kindle anyway. So it happened today. Yeah.
What do you think about the Lombok project to reduce the
Oh, Lombok. In leisure, great. For enterprise project, too much magic. If you have a Maven, you have to be careful when it generates and when it compiles. It's a little bit too much magic for Java. So I like the idea. I don't like it to use it in my Java projects. But really, when you would be in my project, it looks like this. There is nothing more to reduce. We don't have getter, setters, nothing. So it's just pure business logic. And a good Java 7 and Java 6 project is 2% plumbing and 98% business logic. So if you see, what I'm a little bit afraid of the new wave of Java 7 development is like the fancy consultant will come down and write 500 annotations in one class. It's not needed. So think simple. Good question. Other questions?
Can you share this project?
This? Oh yeah, I will zip it and upload it somewhere and tweet the link. Then you click on the link and you get a zip. Agreed? Perfect. Other questions? Sorry, it was not very sophisticated. The last year I hacked everything from scratch with all the Java 6 features. This year I would show you talk about more best practices or how I think, and you cannot implement 2000 Java 7 features for that. See you on Friday. No Friday. Tomorrow is another session about stress testing applications. And another strange thing, unit tests, integration tests are great, and no one tests multi-threaded, but a customer. And this is actually good for me because of task forces, but at one day they should learn that they should do something about this. Yeah? No, you can do this since 2009. It's Java 6. And with Java 5, it would be very, very similar. So actually, what I show you right now is compatible with Absolute with Java 6. And you could, with Java 5, so 2006, you would end up having two more interfaces. So there's no excuse. It is 7 years old architecture, really.
What would you say if you have a legacy application with a lot of remote EJBs
Yeah.
and things like that? Should you, and it's still in development, would you refactor all the old things out? Or
If it works and you are happy with that, not. You should be reason to do this. One reason could be, in addition, you will need some other types of clients which don't understand IOP. Then I would refactor that. The problem with migrating legacy stuff to new stuff is the lack of tests. Migration not a problem, but how to know whether it actually works. This was, yeah. So you will write tests first for the old stuff, then migrate incrementally to the new stuff and test all the time. This is what I can tell you. And that writing the tests is actually a huge portion of the effort. Migration is actually fun, really. Because what you should know, J2E still runs without any modifications in Java 6 containers. So you can make it running first and then remove all the craft from, yeah?
What about the scalability requirement for services different from the rest of the functions? Services need to be deployed in a separate...
No. Scalability, there is a CAP theorem, CAP. What it basically means, if you distribute your systems, it can either scale or be consistent, never both. So I think the best way to scale is to rely on locality principle. So it means you have one war, which is local, and one transaction runs just in one process. And you have load balancer in front of your wars with session affinity. If you need more power, you could start more wars. This is never an issue in my project because the problem we have not with application server. We have always the problem with the database. So we can fire up, 500 instances, and the database dies anyway. So usually, the enterprise applications have always problem with database performance. I never saw actually an enterprise application which had a problem with the application server performance. Did you ever encounter problems with the performance of application server without the database? Case here? Okay. Then you're doing actually something like algorithmics. In most applications, it's just a database browser, yeah? or host browser, or whatever. So, I mean, if you distribute things, it won't work. Proof of concept, container managed persistence, remote beans never worked. The idea was scalability, but it never worked.
Question about security. Classic approach, you have DNZ and safe zone. With this approach, you have to put everything in DNZ.
No, you have upfront, you have the load balancer, communicates with Apache. Apache communicates with ModJK with that, so you have already 3 zones. No. After. No. Other questions? You don't get any T-shirt. You will have to give the T-shirt back here. No, so, other questions? No, then see you tomorrow. I hope it was OK. Thank you.
Last here running on